Morning, Ed here from Crystal Clear Aquatics, and our endless summer of hot weather seems to have ended abruptly, and we're now into nothing but thunderstorms and pouring rain. Autumn is definitely underway, and it's the start of the next project for me. Now this one's a little bit different to some of the normal builds that I would do. I like to tackle jobs in their entirety, and myself or Dave and I like to do all of the jobs in pond restoration and construction work from start to finish. But this one's a little bit different in that my customer, who you will be introduced to shortly, is going to be my labourer for the job, and he's going to be tackling some of the grunt work and employing my services to do some of the rock work and the sort of design, consultation, getting the filtration and various important components up and running. I think in these difficult times at the moment, doing anything like this to try to save a little bit of money and keep the cost down, I fully appreciate and understand are well worth doing. So he is a young fit chap who will be able to tackle a lot of the digging and has already done some of the initial deconstruction work on the pond currently. So I'm going to be heading over there now, seeing how far he's got with taking apart the initial stages of work that I've outlined to him. I'll be able to catch this job early enough that I can show you the pond in its current state and talk through some of the features that we're going to be adding to the pond. But if you've seen some of my videos, you'll know a lot of the essential components I like to include in the pond, generally making sure that the stonework inside the pond conceals all that pond liner, making sure there's nice planting zones and shallows where the plants can get planted directly rather than using baskets. This pond is going to be in a public position, so Daniel, my client, is a hotelier. He owns a couple of boutique hotels in the Guildford area of Surrey. So this is, if you're local, something that once it's completed you could always pop over, have a drink, sit in the garden and have a look at see the pond and the fish yourself. Well, it's no good me sitting in the van here hiding from the rain. I better crack on and get there, and I'll see you when I get there and show you what the pond's like. Right, so I'm here at the hotel, trying to be quiet. Let's pop round the back and see if Daniel's hard at work. Oh, I can hear some activity. There he is. The labourer at work. There's a lot of puddles. How's it going?
Very good, morning.
I should say, you happy to be on the camera?
Yeah, always.
Stick that on there.
What's this?
It's a little muff microphone. Oh. So this is the pond. Well, I would say in its current condition. It's not, because Daniel's already done a lot of work to it. Once upon a time, and I will show you some photographs, there was a very rudimentary old style filtration system rigged up here. It was a sort of a DIY blockwork affair, stuffed filled with brushes and Japanese matting and other various media. It was quite effective and efficient, but it was very difficult to maintain and pretty unsightly, and that mound really just disguised and concealed the pond from the nice view here from the back of the hotel. So that's all gone, and that was all Dan's hard work. All of the paving and the edging stonework here is being removed, and the idea is that when the pond is relined, that we're going to increase the size to incorporate marginal zones and edging all the way around the pond. So the footprint of the actual pond itself is going to increase to this outer edge. This is a lovely koi pond. Some nice fish in here. So the purpose of this job is really, essentially, to reline it. The pond's been here for what, 20 years? The line has come to the end of its life. And again, in the process, we can do a few tweaks and redesigns to really improve it. Primarily, ever since I've known the pond, it's that back wall over here where it's not level and there's a huge amount of visible pond liner, which has always jarred me. So it's going to be nice to get rid of that. There's going to be quite a formal raised wall up in the corner here with a nice big water blade pouring in. At some stage, a nice seating decking area in this area. Nice place to look at the pond. It's going to be a team effort though, this one. So as I said in the car, Dan's going to be my labourer and has already done a good job of a lot of this laborious tasks here, and he's employing me just to do some of the aspect of interior design within the pond, focusing on the filtration, electrics, and a little bit of consultation, I guess, on this as well, as I'm the expert. Today is going to be draining the pond down, setting up holding tanks for the livestock and to reserve as much of this water as possible, and pray that the weather holds off. So in the process of hooking these fish out, there's 2 or 3 of them which have got some quite visible ulcers. So this is going to be a really good opportunity to apply a topical treatment directly to the wounds when they go into the holding tank, and we can kind of inspect every fish as they go in. Most of them are looking okay. In fact, there were some, that white one there had wounds, didn't he, earlier this year? That's repaired quite nicely. Where's the chap with the big ulcer?
This one's got a little bit of on his back fin, you can see.
Oh yeah. Well, something like that we wouldn't worry too much about. In fact, that's more likely to be cart pox, viral, and not anything that a topical treatment's going to touch. But yeah, you can see that dark koi. See if we can get any closer. At the back there, with a lovely looking, looks like vegetarian bacon stuck on his back, isn't it? Looks just like it. That's going to need to have some treatment applied directly. He looks a bit lethargic as well, bless him. Now obviously hooking the fish out and putting them in the holding tank is going to be stressful at the best of times. So a fish that's already got issues, additional stress is just going to make it worse. So we want to make it as seamless and stress-free as possible for the fish, and applying some treatment is only going to help. Pond's cleared up quite nicely. So I think we need to formally introduce you. This is Daniel,
Hello.
proprietor of this fine establishment. Are we allowed to say the name of it on there?
Of course you can.
So where are we?
This is the Esperion Hillside Hotel in Worplesdon. We have another hotel just down the road, the Esperion. Perfect location towards Guildford, Woking and surrounding areas.
And when this is all done, people can come and sit in the garden and...
They certainly can. You'll probably find me on the deck with a Peroni in hand, you know, living Ed's life.
Yeah, look at this crappy weather. This is it, straight away. So here we are under my lovely gazebo without the Pims. Just waiting to put the holding tanks up. So I think it's going to be waders on and waterproofs on. And then crack on. You need to have a... I seem to always find myself saying crack on in videos. I don't know if you noticed
You know,
that.
you say random
So you
things.
need a catchphrase of your own.
I need my good looking side on the camera.
This is a service that I'm not used to on a job.
See, this is what we call hospitality.
Thank you very much.
Don't mess about.
Very kind, thank you.
I'll leave that.
Well, the pond's draining, holding tanks are going up. It has not stopped doing this all day. I'm hiding under the gazebo. Dan's doing some work in the bushes somewhere. Honestly, the weather today, I don't know, I've spent more time taking my coat on and off than doing any real work. So, pond's almost empty. We've got the fish holding tank rigs up and one of the main reservoirs filled up. There's a little bit of water left. It's the muckiest stuff on the bottom, so we're just now pumping to waste. We're rigging up the temporary filtration system. Normally on a small holding tank like this, I would rig up just a pressurised filter, but we've got a lot of fish in here, large density of koi, and the best thing to do is for us to rig up the old existing filtration system, so we've got already established filter media, so that the fish have a seamless transition from one pond to the other. So part of this job is upgrading the system. We've already recently upgraded from the old DIY filter and put one of the larger Waza Screenmatic systems on, but we're actually adding a second one. So ultimately when the job is done, there's going to be 2 very large Waza Screenmatic 140,000 systems. The new one that came in recently, we've taken out all of the new media and we've swapped it around with the old media that's mature and established, so we can get this up and running. And I'm just now connecting up some hose tails to the pipe work so we can rig up the UV and the pump with the filter. Now a couple of little tips. With the hose tails, they come as a stepped hose tail, so you can get various sizes of hose on there. It's always good advice to cut off the smaller aperture sizes so that you're not putting restrictions on the water flow. So always cut to the size of the hose. In this instance, this is 1.5 inches. That'll go straight onto there. It's a little bit cold today, the pipe's old, it's not very flexible, and it's not easy for me to push that on. So again, another little time-saving tip is just to apply a little bit of heat, some hot water or a heat gun, just to soften this up. Now make sure you've already got the hose clip in place before you attach the hose tail. A very common schoolboy error there is to attach this and then realise that the other end's already fixed to something, and you can't get the hose clip on very easily without taking it apart fully and stretching it over. So make sure you've got that clip on first. There we go. It's nice and soft. That'll go straight in without any problems. Lovely. And then we can just clamp this down and that'll fix onto the pump nicely. There's a lot of water in this pond. We are nearly empty. Large volume of water held in that blue tank. Fish holding tank rigged up. Filtration all sitting there nicely. That's worked nicely. So we've got the big screen-o-matic on there. We'll get that netted over when the fish go in. But we'll pump out another 6 inches of water or so, just to make it a bit easier to hook the fish out, and then we can start netting them out. Now we've got some large water lilies in here. Now this is proof that you can keep plants, for example water lilies, in koi specific ponds. But the important thing is you've got to make sure they're big robust varieties of lily, and you've got to make sure they're in a big basket which is covered in a grid so the fish can't get down to the planting medium. And these lilies have been fine in here for a few years. They come up every year, plenty of flowers, plenty of pads, and a nice addition to a koi pond. Daniel's doing a rare bit of work. So, it's apple bobbing time. Who's going first? No, it's fish catching time. And even in this shallow water, they're going to be quite difficult to catch.
He's behind you, Ed.
The two or three fish that need a little bit of medication, we're going to leave until the end. They're strong, aren't they? Oh, no, missed him. First fish. That is a lovely fish. You all right? You got it? Yeah. Excellent.
It's be the first time we can properly count how many there is as well.
Yeah. Do you not know exactly the number?
No.
I'm supposed to be a professional at this. I need a second net. Have you got a surface net, a skimming net?
Yeah, and a proper net.
Yeah, I'll have the proper net then. 2 would be much better. Number 3.
Now that's the one with the fin rod.
It is. So you might as well go and get the medication.
I've got it here.
Okay, let's open it up and we'll have a look. So we're using some topical treatments so that we can heal a little bit of some nasty fin rot which has become infected on the caudal fin or the tail fin of the koi. And it starts to eat away into the fleshy part of the fish, which is called the caudal peduncle. And once it gets into there, then it can cause all sorts of problems. So we want to nip that in the bud before it gets too bad. Right, I might as well come out. Once we've got the towels laid out on the floor.
You're coming now.
Okay, and all we're going to do is just give it literally a few pumps of the anti-black spray. Apply a little bit of top coat sealer with this, and that's it. Straight into the... If we can, we'll leave the fish in the net whilst we're doing it.
Don't tell the laundry company. Do you want these in the pond?
Yeah, I'll just get one of them soaked.
Tell the camera that this is finest Egyptian cotton towels.
the camera can hear. Here we go. No, don't rain. Just keep his eye covered over. Okay, that's it. And that's going to be much more effective than applying a liquid treatment to the whole volume of the pond. But that's probably going to have to be applied more than once. What a mess. Groundwork is never nice in these conditions. Still, at least I'm not doing much digging on this. Sorry, Dan. You got in? So all the fish are out. We've found one little baby. Here we go. So we've got a little baby carp that Dan never knew was there. So all the fish happily relocated into the holding tank, and a couple of fish that needed a little bit of attention with some treatment, especially this one here. That darker fish had a very large ulcer on its side. So it's quite busy, there's a lot of fish in here, but with a large filtration system, way over the top for a volume of this size. But it's going to stand the fish in as good a stead as they can have. I just wish this weather would improve. That's the end of a hard day, and finally the sun's come out. Some perks of working at a hotel. Chin chin. Thank you.
Cheers.
So the next stage now is back over to Dan, and unfortunately he's got, well, the bulk of the hard work. So you've got to remove the rest of the foundations from the pathway. You've got to break away all of the brickwork and start excavating down to this level all the way around. And then I'm going to come back on the scene, we'll get the laser out and we'll start to gauge levels and mark out exactly what's going to be dug, what's going to be marginal zone, how steep and smooth the edges are going to be. And then once it's been dug out, we can get the measure out and start to measure up for the pond liner. But we're a couple of weeks away, I reckon, before we're at that stage.
Goodie.
A couple of weeks of digging, I think. It's going to be a hard task to do, but I have every faith in you.
Thanks, mate. Feel free to pop in.
Thank you. Well, good morning. We'll fast forward a couple of weeks and Dan has done the bulk of the work. Let's come and have a look at the fish. So the filtration's done a great job here of keeping the holding tank nice and clean. The fish are looking very happy. And over here, you can see what Daniel's been doing for the last 10 days or so. And that's no mean feat for one person on his own, so Daniel, a pat on the back to you, well done. But we've still got a lot of digging to do. We need to now establish a nice, uniform, level shelf all the way around the pond. Now, the paving and the hardcore and foundations beneath the paving here was quite deep, so at first glance it doesn't look like there's an awful lot of excavation to be done around this side of the pond, but looks can be deceiving. It's not level, the ground is substantially higher over this side, so we've got an awful lot of digging to do to reclaim a shelf around the back of the pond here. So today's job's going to be draining out all the water from the pond, going to get the laser rigged up so we can start to establish a decent level shelf, and then I'm going to crack on and get digging. So this amount of water might give you an indication of the kind of weather we've had recently. It's not been great, but thankfully the weather looks to be pretty fair for the next couple of weeks. So if we can get the groundwork done and the digging done in the dry, I'll be happy. It's very early days yet, but it's already starting to take shape. And all the edges that were once quite a broad paved area are going to be now quite a nice marginal zone, planting zone. I'm not sure if we're going to extend that all the way around the pond. We certainly are around this side here walling at the back there where the water blade's going to be, and then a nice big planting area over here. But I think it might be quite nice to extend that around the back of the pond as well. Right, that's the pond emptied, thereabouts. Next job for me, before I get the laser out, is I need to establish where the lowest point of ground level is going to be, because the pond level is going to be dictated by the surrounding ground level. Now I want the water level obviously to be slightly lower than ground level, so I need to try and work out where that low point is going to be. I can knock a peg in the ground, which is going to then be kind of the maximum water level, and for the rest of the job I can work off of that peg to start to give me levels for my shelving, planting zones and rock areas. So I'm pretty sure it's around that area there, which is the low spot. I'll get the laser out and I'll work it out. So I've got my trusty laser set up here on the tripod. This is a good position because it means I can span the majority of the pond. I've got my little receiver. So I'm going to work out now where the low spot of the pond is around that end. Okay, so it's all pretty uniform around this area, and this is definitely the low spot of the pond. So I'm going to knock a peg in the ground here. Obviously we want water level to be lower than lawn level, but we want it to be as deep as possible to maximise volume and to try to raise that surface of the pond and keep it as visible as possible all around the garden. So realistically, water level is going to be about this shelf, and then from here we can dig down 10-12 inches or so, and that's going to provide then enough depth to create that rock shelf and that marginal zone. It's quite a lot of digging. Video, you doing some work. Daniel's back on the scene. You wouldn't have been lifting big ones like
that. Get that back on track
a few weeks ago, would you?
Certainly not. I thought I'd be done by now, if I'm honest.
So, digging is underway. Thankfully it's not too bad. Establishing this nice level shelf all the way around here, but there's going to be a lot more to dig out around this section. So Dan's just doing a bit of a clear up so we can start to work out the shape of the pond. So when I'm quoting for jobs like this, I'll always stipulate subject to ground conditions, and this is why. Would you like to explain what we've encountered? So we're trying to obviously build a nice level edge all the way around the pond. So it looks like the original construction of the pond, they've used at the back here as a retainer some timber, some old decking, which is a horrendous thing to do. There's a lot of rubble, metal, so all that's got to come out, and this is now significantly lower than what will be the marginal shelf. So we have two options. We either build this back up to the correct level, or we dig back a little bit, increase the footprint of the pond slightly so that that shelf is further back, and that's probably what we'll end up doing. But all of this has to come out. Look at that metal spike that was in there. Dan's enjoying himself. Yeah, that timber's all the way along, isn't it? Look at it, what they've used these as pilings to hold all that up. That is horrendous. Well, it's all got to come out, and then we'll deal with the consequences afterwards.
Should I get my lawyers involved?
Might be worthwhile. Oh, that was hard work like that.
Your beer's here, Ed.
Thank you, Daniel. Oh, good morning. Day 3 on the job, 16 hours in of digging. Still an awful lot of digging to go. Poor Daniel, of course, has had 10 days, 2 weeks, more grafting and labour on top, getting rid of all of that before I even turned up. But this is some serious digging now. So this is an area that we hadn't envisaged discovering. It's increased the footprint of the pond, the volume of the pond quite significantly. I know Dan's always wanted to have a few more fish in his pond, so now he's got the perfect excuse to do so. But today, it's dealing with this monstrosity. Obviously, at some point in the past, this has been unstable. The pond was dug a bit too sheer for a pond of this sort of depth. And at some point in the past, a load of these pilings and sort of makeshift retainers have been put in to hold all of this back. And this is all got to come out. This bank has got to get dug out. This is a mixture of just sort of rubble, soil, clay, concrete. And in the process, we need to try to establish a nice curve and a nice graduating slope to make sure that this is all nice and stable. It's not going to be easy digging. All of this spoil will fall into the pond. It's a little bit too high really to get ramps and wheelbarrows up, so it's all going to get sort of bucketed out and carried off to the skip. But my target today is if we can just try and get rid of this bit. From there, the rest of the digging is relatively easy. The soil is lovely. It's a very, very soft, fantastic topsoil here. It's a real shame actually to be getting rid of it. We'll hang on to some of it for the garden, but the majority of it is going. So I reckon another 2 or 3 days and we should have this pretty much done, ready to measure up and then order up the pond liner. Whoa. So we've had a successful morning. We've managed to remove that retainer and all those upright supports, which was no easy task. And now it's the job of shaping and re-establishing a nice kind of uniform shelf here at the back. There's still a huge chunk of earth that we need to dig out, but we've got an approximate shape marked up on the floor here just with a bit of red spray paint, making sure we've got a nice lean gradient, nice angle to make sure that this is nice and stable. And we'll dig the bulk of this up and then see what the bank and the material is like. It may well be that some of this is too soft and loose and that we might have to then support this and reinforce it with a bit of concrete and perhaps some mesh. I'm hoping not, but we'll find out when we get rid of this. You feeling all right?
Wonderful, always.
Good, good. It's very wet. There was a lot of leaks in the pond originally. This was the area where a cascade poured into the pond, and once upon a time with one of the tumbles, some of the bigger rocks had come in, had damaged the liner, and in the past they'd been repaired, and these repairs had failed over the years and had been leaking for a long time. So this area here was really, really wet and saturated. So it's not nice stuff to be digging into. Right, let's scrape up and pick up all this rubbish. Burning a few calories today. This is becoming a bloody great big hole. As some people have said, it looks like a bomb crater now. We're currently waiting for a skip to be emptied, which is rather annoying. So rather than not do anything, we're now going around scraping the insides of the pond, shaping it and making sure that all of the edges have got a nice sort of even gradient, none of these lumps and bumps, and establishing some nice curves in the pond. Now this area here is going to end up being a nice raised wall with a water blade in, a light, uplighting and illuminating that water blade. So this is going to be a lovely feature wall. And I've got to make sure that the water blade pours directly into the pond rather than pouring into the shallows. So the shelving here is going to be much, much smaller than around these planting zones at the edge of the pond. Fantastic tool. A nice big heavy 10 kilo digging bar, metal chisel. Fantastic for digging post holes. Ideal for this kind of work. But with the camera set up at the other side of the pond and me over here, hopefully you're starting to get some scale about how big this pond is going to be. It's massive.